Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next thrilling and exciting and astounding, amazing, ebullient, effervescent, inimical episode of the irreparable, irreproachable, amicable reading cow from another world show that this is. We begin. Here beginneth the book called Decameron, and surnamed Prince Galahad, wherein are contained 100 stories in 10 days told. That means they were told in 10 days, in case you didn't understand that, by 7 ladies and 3 young men. Proem. A kindly thing it is to have compassion of the afflicted, and albeit it well beseemeth every one, yet of those is it more particularly required who have erst had need of comfort, and have found it in any, amongst whom, if ever any had need thereof, or held it dear, or took pleasure therein aforetimes, certes. I am one of these. For that, having from my first youth unto this present been beyond measure inflamed with a very high and noble passion, higher and nobler, perchance, than might appear, were I to relate it, to sort with my low estate, albeit by persons of discretion who had intelligence thereof, I was commended therefore, and accounted so much the more worth. Nay, the less a passing sore travail it was to me to bear it, not certes by reason of the cruelty of the beloved lady, but because of the exceeding ardour begotten in my breast of an ill-ordered appetite, for that it suffered me not to stand content at any reasonable bounds, caused me ofttimes feel more chagrin than I had occasion for. In this my affliction, the pleasant discourse of a certain friend of mine and his admirable consolations afforded me such refreshment that I firmly believe of these it came that I died not. But as it pleased him, who being himself infinite, hath for immutable law appointed unto all things mundane that they shall have an end, my love, beyond every other fervent, and which nor stress of reasoning, nor counsel, nor yet manifest shame nor peril that might ensue thereof, had availed either to break or to bend of its own motion in process of time, on such wise abated that of itself at this present it hath left me only that pleasance which it is used to afford unto whoso adventureth himself not too far in the navigation of its profounder oceans, by reason whereof, all chagrin being done away, I feel it grown delightsome, whereas it used to be grievous. Yet, albeit the pain hath ceased, not therefore is the memory fled of the benefits whilom received, and the kindnesses bestowed on me by those to whom of the goodwill they bore me, my troubles were grievous. Nor, as I deem, will it ever pass away save for death, and for that gratitude to my thinking is among the other virtues especially commendable, and its contrary blameworthy. I have, that I may not appear ungrateful, bethought myself now that I can call myself free to endeavor in that little which is possible to me to afford some relief in requital of that which I received aforetime, if not to those who succoured me, and who, belike by reason of their good sense or of their fortune, have no occasion therefore, to those at least who stand in need thereof, And albeit my support, or rather I should say my comfort, may be, and indeed is of little enough avail to the afflicted, natheless meseemeth it should rather be proffered, whereas the need appeareth greater, as well because it will there do more service, as for that it will still be there the liefer had. And who will deny that this comfort, whatsoever worth it be, it behoveth much more to give unto lovesick ladies than unto men? For that these within their tender bosoms, fearful and shamefast, hold hid the fires of love, which those who have provided know how much more puissance they have than those which are manifest, and constrained by the wishes, the pleasures, the commandments of the fathers, mothers, brothers, and husbands, abide most time enmewed in the narrow compass of their chambers, and sitting in a manner idle, willing and willing not, in one breath, revolve in themselves various thoughts, which it is not possible should still be merry. By reason whereof, if there arise in their minds any melancholy bred of ardent desire, needs must it with grievous annoy abide therein, except it be done away by new discourse. More by token that they are far less strong than men to endure. With men in love it happeneth not on this wise, as we may manifestly see. They, if any melancholy or heaviness of thought oppress them, have many means of easing it or doing it away. Wonder what that means. For that to them, and they have a mind thereto, there lacketh not commodity of going about hearing and seeing many things, fowling, hunting, fishing, riding, gaming, and trafficking, each of which means hath, altogether or in part, power to draw the mind unto itself, and to divert it from the troublous thought, at least for some space of time, whereafter, one way or another, either solacement superveneth, or else the annoy groweth less, wherefore to the end that the unright of fortune may by me in part be amended, which where there is the less strength to endure, as we see it in delicate ladies, hath there been the more niggard of support. I purpose for the succor and solace of ladies in love unto others, the needle and the spindle and the reel suffice to recount on 100 stories, or fables, or parables, or histories, or whatever you like to style them, in 10 days' time, related by an honorable company of 7 ladies and 3 young men, made in the days of the late deadly pestilence, together with sundry canzonets sung by the aforesaid ladies for their diversion. In these stories will be found love chances, both gladsome and grievous, and other accidents of fortune, befallen as well in times present as in days of old, whereof the ladies aforesaid, who shall read them, may at once take solace from the delectable things therein shown forth, and useful counsel, inasmuch as they may learn thereby what is to be eschewed, and what is on likewise to be ensued, the which methinketh cannot be tied without cease of chagrin. If it happens thus, as God grant it may, let them render thanks therefore to Love, who by loosing me from his bonds hath vouchsafed me the power of applying myself to the service of their pleasures. Day the 1st. Here beginneth the first day of the Decameron, wherein, after demonstration made by the author of the manner in which it came to pass that the persons who are hereinafter presented foregathered for the purpose of devising together, under the governance of Pampinea, is discoursed of that which is most agreeable unto each. Can you believe this, folks? Okay. As often, most gracious ladies, as taking thought in myself, I mind me how very pitiful you are all by nature. So often do I recognize that this present work will, to your thinking, have a grievous and a weariful beginning, inasmuch as the dolorous remembrance of the late pestiferous mortality, which it beareth on its forefront, is universally irksome to all who saw or otherwise knew it. But I would not therefore have this affright you from reading farther, as if in the reading you were still to fare among sighs and tears. Yet let this grisly beginning be none other to you than is to wayfarers a rugged and steep mountain, beyond which is situate a most fair and delightful plain, which latter cometh so much the pleasanter to them as the greater was the hardship of the ascent and the descent. For, like as dolor occupieth the extreme of gladness, even so are miseries determined by eminent joyance. This brief annoy, I say brief inasmuch as it is contained in a few pages, is straightway succeeded by the pleasance and delight, which I have already promised you, and which, belike, were it not aforesaid, might not be looked for from such a beginning. And in truth, could I fairly have availed to bring you to my desire otherwise than by so rugged a path as this, will be I had gladly done it. But being in a manner constrained thereto, for that, without this reminiscence of our past miseries, it might not be shown what was the occasion of the coming about of the things that will hereafter be read, I have brought myself to write them. I say then that the years of the era of the fruitful incarnation of the Son of God had attained to the number of 1,348, when into the notable city of Florence, fair over every other of Italy, there came the death-dealing pestilence, which, through the operation of the heavenly bodies or of our own iniquitous dealings, being sent down upon mankind for our correction by the just wrath of God, had some years before appeared in the parts of the East, and after having bereft these latter of an innumerable number of inhabitants, extending without cease from one place to another, had now unhappily spread towards the West. And there against no wisdom availing, nor human foresight, whereby the city was purged of many impurities by officers deputed to that end, and it was forbidden unto any sick person to enter therein, and many were the counsels given for the preservation of health, nor yet humble supplications, not once but many times, both in ordered processions and on otherwise, made unto God by devout persons, about the coming in of the spring of the aforesaid year. It began on horrible and miraculous wise to show forth its dolorous effects, yet not as it had done in the East, where, if any bled at the nose, it was a manifest sign of inevitable death. Nay, but in men and women alike there appeared at the beginning of the malady certain swellings, either on the groin or under the armpits, whereof some waxed of the bigness of a common apple, others like unto an egg, some more and some less, and these the vulgar named plague boils. For these two parts the aforesaid death-bearing plague boils proceeded in brief space to appear and come indifferently in every part of the body, wherefrom, after a while, the fashion of the contagion began to change into black or livid blotches, which showed themselves in many, first in the arms and about the thighs, and spread to every other part of the person, and some large and sparse, and others small and thick sown, and like as the plague boils had been first and yet were a very certain token of coming death, even so were these for every one to whom they came. To the cure of these maladies, nor counsel of physician, nor virtue of any medicine appeared to avail, or profit aught. On the contrary, whether it was that the nature of the infection suffered it not, or that the ignorance of the physicians, of whom, over and above the men of art, the number, both men and women, who had never had any teaching of medicine, was becoming exceeding great, availed not to know whence it arose, and consequently took not due measures thereagainst. Sounds familiar. Not only did few recover thereof, but well nigh all died within the 3rd day from the appearance of the aforesaid signs, this sooner and that later, and for the most part without fever or other accident. And this pestilence was the more virulent for that, by communication with those who were sick thereof, it gat hold upon the sound no otherwise than fire upon things dry or greasy, whenas they are brought very near thereunto. Nay, the mischief was yet greater, for that not only did converse and consortion with the sick give to the sound infection of cause of common death, but the mere touching of the clothes, or of whatsoever other thing had been touched or used of the sick, appeared of itself to communicate the malady to the toucher. A marvelous thing to hear is that which I have to tell, and one which, had it not been seen of many men's eyes and of mine own, I had scarce dared credit, much less set down in writing, though I had heard it from one worthy of belief. I say then that of such efficience was the nature of the pestilence in question, in communicating itself from one to another, that not only did it pass from man to man, but this which is much more, it many times visibly did, to wit, a thing which had pertained to a man sick or dead of the aforesaid sickness, being touched by an animal foreign to the human species, not only infected this latter with the plague, but in a very brief space of time killed it. Of this mine own eyes, as hath a little before been said, had one day, among others, experience on this wise, to wit, that the rags of a poor man who had died of the plague being cast out into the public way, 2 dogs came up to them, and having first, after their wont, rooted amain among them with their snouts, took them in their mouths and tossed them about in their jaws. Then in a little while, after turning and round and round, they both, as if they had taken poison, fell down dead upon the rags which they had an ill hour intermeddled. Think about it. From these things, and many like unto them, or yet stranger diverse fears and conceits were begotten in those who abode alive, which well nigh all tended to a very barbarous conclusion, namely, to shun and flee from the sick and all that pertained to them. And thus doing, each thought to secure immunity for himself. Some there were who conceived that to live moderately and keep oneself from all excess was the best defence against such a danger. Wherefore, making up their company, they lived removed from every other, and shut themselves up in those houses where none had been sick, and where living was best, and there, using very temperately of the most delicate viands and the finest wines, and eschewing all incontinence, they abode with music and such other diversions as they might have, never suffering themselves to speak with any, nor choosing to hear any news from without of death or sick folk. Others, inclining to the contrary opinion, maintained that to carouse and make merry and go about singing and frolicking and satisfy the appetite in everything possible, and laugh and scoff at whatsoever befell, was a very certain remedy for such an ill, that which they said they put in practice as best they might, going about day and night, now in this tavern, now in that, drinking without stint or measure, and on this wise they did yet more freely in other folks' houses. So but they scented there aught that liked or tempted them, as they might lightly do, for that every one, as he were to live no longer, had abandoned all care of his possessions, as of himself, wherefore the most part of the houses were become common good, and strangers used them, whenas they happened upon them, like as the very owner might have done. And with all this bestial preoccupation, they still shun the sick to the best of their power. In this sore affliction and misery of our city, the reverend authority of the laws, both human and divine, was all in a manner dissolved and fallen into decay, for lack of the ministers and executors thereof, who, like other men, were all either dead or sick, or else left destitute of followers, that they were unable to exercise any office. Wherefore every one had license to do whatsoever pleased him. Many others held a middle course between the two aforesaid, not straightening themselves so exactly in the matter of diet as the first, neither allowing themselves such license in drinking and other debauchery as the second, but using things in sufficiency according to their appetites. Nor did they seclude themselves, but went about carrying in their hands some flowers, some odoriferous herbs, and some other divers kinds of spiceries, which they set often to their noses, accounting it an excellent thing to fortify the brain with such odors, more by token that the air seemed all heavy and attainted with the stench of the dead bodies, and that of the sick, and of the remedies used. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of the next thrilling, exciting, astounding, effervescent, irreproachable, irreplaceable, castigated, ameliorated, effervescent, and ebullient, inimical episode of the abominable, assimilable reading Calvin of the World with bedtime stories in the first installment of the episode of the chapter of the section of the Decameron of Bocaccio. Join us again next time for the next show, thing, which this is. And until then, goodbye.